welcome to Friday night's video in our second Master Series. I do believe this is the 63rd video in our second Master Series, the 12th video on basic processors, and the 11th video talking about equalizers. So I really hope when we are talking about, the parametric EQ and the dynamic parametric EQ, that those are your most fundamental bread and butter tools. You mastering them is going to be fundamental in you becoming that next level master audio engineer. Now, I wanted to address something in this issue. This video may be the final video on equalization. The concept here is that we talk about the parametric EQ like that, and I included the dynamic EQ because of the quote-unquote catch-all word in the industry being, transparency. And a lot of times that bridges that border to not suffocating and over-processing things and maintaining the life or trying to breathe life into something, and the dynamic EQ can be fundamental in helping you do that. Now, when we have gone through all that we've talked about so far in the first Master Series and in the second Master Series talking about equalization at all phases and stages and every moment in time being important, that we come to another issue. This issue is that things are evolving all the time as far as equalization. One of the big catch things right now is automated EQ work, meaning, they're trying to do things with equalization that are standard for certain types of genres or applications and things like that, which, in my humble opinion, is not going to take you to become the next level master audio engineer and you yourself to becoming the next Chris Lord Algae or any number of mixing and mastering audio engineers or recording engineers, because it's their opinion that really gets them there, which is never going to be automated by an algorithm. They may come out with things to some point, but that's them, not you. So, you got to find you in there somewhere, and you experimenting, becoming part of you is part of you evolving into that next level master audio engineer. So we come to things that are automated, like presets, things like that can be problematic, in my humble opinion, but they can be a starting place for you to build other presets. Does that make sense? So they're worth investigating, and other types of software that are doing equalization differently. FabFilter Pro EQ, I've been kicking myself for a while to try to get that EQ, but I've been trying not to because of being comfortable with equalizers I'm using. And when I make a change out of my bread and butter EQs, it better be doing something really cool. I've been avoiding buying it because I know dang well I'll probably switch to it, which is going to take me out of a comfort zone that I'm in. This is a hurdle. Sometimes you want to avoid doing that because you have things flowing along just fine. Don't change something that isn't broke. And sometimes you got to be careful that you're not going ahead and stepping into something new because you're like all comfortable, bro, and you don't want to step into something new. It's like, I don't know, you don't want to go there either. So, you have to be real careful and use your mind and know when it's something that isn't advanced, because sometimes some things are going to make you change your workflow. That's why when we talk about equalization, I really tell you to focus on your bread and butter EQs, your parametric EQs, get to understand the things we talked about and the dynamic EQs really well to get done what you want to do with the things we talked about so far in equalization. If you master those, you are going to do fine, and you are going to start becoming that next level master audio engineer. The next thing we talk about is other type equalizers. This is like some type of vintage EQ. In my humble opinion, I have absolutely no use for this. I just don't. And you have things like passive EQs, all kinds of different EQs that are going to be doing different things. And you also have smaller versions of your parametric EQs or semi-parametric EQs. A lot of times these can be good for applications once you become that next level master audio engineer, that you might just pull one out that does something that you're used to because you are a really good audio engineer and you don't have to fuss with your parametric EQ. But my question always is why? Does that make sense? It's causing you to fuss with more equipment than you need to, that is not really helpful to you, being rather than you focus on getting what you want done with a certain type of EQ. Say like my bread and butter, standard parametric EQ and my dynamic EQ from Ozone, which sometimes I use my Ozone 8 equalizer. I've been caught in this thing of I've used my DAW equalizer and mastering my parametric EQ, and now do I want to use my Ozone equalizer? Or do I want to buy the Fab filter, Pro EQ, or whatever it is? Because I haven't really found enough to make me switch yet. Because I know what I'm doing with that, and I know exactly what it is. I'm real used to it, and I don't want to switch yet. Does that make sense? Not that I'm going to probably not buy it and fuss with it, but just like this one, this isn't my go-to EQ in my Ozone equalizer. I use my one out of my DAW because I know exactly what it does and I'm really comfortable with it. But I'm in the process of switching. Which one that might be is debatable. But, besides that fact, is that different equalizers have some different things happening. As they get better, even your bread and butter parametric EQs and parametric dynamic EQs is like my neutron equalizer is a combination. It's got a dynamic mode besides just straight parametric EQ that I can actually switch to, and switch it into dynamic mode, which is great. I mean, it's a combination of them both. As things advance, I'm real careful because as they go along and they start trying to combine things, you get something. I've got a compressor, an outboard compressor that I bought, and it cost me $15,000. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles on it. It does the one thing it's supposed to do well. And I don't want it to do 10 different things. I want it, the one thing that it does do, to do well. Now, if you watch my videos, I don't use hardly no outboard gear. So I wait for them to perfect software because that's where it's going. Does that make sense in the digital realm? Because you can make things sound analog all day long with noise, saturation, distortion, and things like that to achieve the same type of sound once you become a good audio engineer. So them combining these things, I'm real leery of because I really watch out for that because it's just like I talked about my EQ. I want it to do equalization. I don't want it to have a bunch of bells and whistles on. I want it to do what it's supposed to do. All the money and time spent on making it do that as good as possible. And I want a compressor, I'll buy a damn compressor. Now, I know that sounds funny, but it's very prominent in the way I see things. Now, this is debatable, but investigating and testing how well they do that is something that is very much a part of you becoming that next level master audio engineer. You testing things, downloading, free trial versions and testing them to see if they do all that really well before you start switching all the time, that you spend so much time investigating things rather than practicing with tools you're comfortable with, doing as good a job as you can, and honing your opinion about how things should be done, which is much more important than the other thing of switching all the time into the next new thing that's come out that is not, you are spending way too much time changing all the time rather than focusing on your abilities and your opinion and honing that. So, we come to other things like my Ozone equalizer. Things like this. It's got an analog version or a digital version. Be very careful of things like that. Those kind of things. It's doing something to the audio, which is you reading about how much information it's actually giving you, you testing it to see exactly what it's doing to the audio. These things I'm kind of real careful about. Sometimes they do them real well, sometimes they don't. And if you don't know exactly what it's doing to it, that it's just like having two different outboard compressors that you spent, or two different, microphones that you spent $50,000 on because of the sound they have, which is great if you have that kind of money. But I can take a $300 microphone and make it sound like any microphone you give me. I guarantee you can bring Beyonce in here, and I can take a $300 microphone, and you can bring the whole rack of $50,000 microphones, and I can make it sound like either one of those, and you will never be able to tell the difference. Because I understand how to work audio engineering and to compensate for what it's lacking and to make it sound like what's coming out of that other microphone. Does that make sense? So be real careful of this kind of stuff. And other things are like things like this. It's got different options. It's like even on my high pass or my high pass and if my filter here is that it's got different options. You look at what's going on here, and if I change this to different options, a resonant, flat, resonant, brick wall, these are doing different things that are great. What this is telling you is it's trying to, if you get something like MATLAB and you really get into filtering and start studying filtering, that piece of software, something like that, will really help you go to that next level of really understanding audio engineering filters. The problem with a lot of these things is that music and sound is so complicated when you're dealing with music. It's not like you're dealing with things in a novice application where you've got 2 frequencies or 3 frequencies that you have to really be careful with. Otherwise, you're going to crash into Saturn. Whereas you don't have that kind of luxury in a music production. You've got bazillions of sinusoids doing all kinds of different things at any given moment, to where you trying to get that detailed into what's happening, it can be very questionable of whether it's going to do you any good or not. But I'm not dissuading you from getting into it. The issue here is these things are really starting to lean into more complex filters rather than really basic filters like we talked about when I was talking about the basic parametric EQ filtering systems. That these ones are getting into looking at these filters in a whole different way, so that you're looking at the different types of filters in more complex filters for doing more complex things. Now, the problem here is that, like I've said before, whenever we're looking at any of these, how useful are they going to be in music? Now, you can argue this point till doomsday, but the point is, at some point, some things get to be just too much work. It's like me taking your music production into MATLAB and saying I've recreated a DAW in MATLAB and I can use all this other stuff that's audio engineering geared for NASA that I'm going to do your music production in. You go and Google how many people actually put music productions together in MATLAB. So you have to understand that there's a fine line. I was reading the other day that, who was it? Billie Eilish, she produced her album and these songs, and they got voted the best audio engineered production, and the studio she did it in was $3,000 worth of equipment. So you have to understand that she did not do that production in MATLAB. And as far as the quote unquote music industry is concerned, and the quote unquote population in that category, felt that was done pretty well with $3,000 with equipment and not done in MATLAB. So you have to really understand these more in-depth filters, what it's actually doing, what they were made for, and to understand if you can apply them. There's no doubt you can, as you become a better and better audio engineer, that you will come across things. You'll come across this high shelf resonant filter, and you're looking at this, and when you understand what it's doing and you understand what it was created for and what some of its applications for and what it was initially designed for, to compensate for or to deal with, then you can start trying to apply that into the music realm of where you might find that happening during a music production. But if you don't understand that, you might not. And it might just end up a whole lot of stuff that has absolutely no use to you in any way, shape, or form to really help you become that next level master audio engineer. Now, that doesn't mean that that's not going to help you become the next level master audio engineer, that you're dealing with things in a much more detailed way and studying, more acoustics, the science of sound, and trying to get your stuff to that next level. So don't worry, we'll have a next Master Audio Engineer series after we get in with this one to help you get there. But just remember that that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. So peace, hope, love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this next video on dealing with equalizers, and I will see you in the next video when we wrap up our equalization on this next master here. audio engineering series. See you there.